Imagine winning the lottery, walking straight into a luxury car dealership, and just, buying the two most expensive vehicles on the showroom floor.
Right, without even looking at the price.
Without even blinking. And that is essentially what Tottenham Hotspur did this afternoon.
Yeah.
Dropping an eye-watering £185 million on just two midfielders.
It's unbelievable.
It really is. Welcome to this deep dive into the absolute madness of the current football transfer window. And before we unpack all of this, a massive thank you to all of you out there for tuning into our football transfer news and updates.
Yeah, absolutely.
We love exploring this wild market with you, so please continue to support us with a like, share, and subscribe. Your support really does mean everything.
It really does. And frankly, this is the perfect time to be diving into these sources because the very rules of the transfer market they're fundamentally shifting under our feet right now.
Yeah, the landscape is just totally different. Our mission today is to get through this massive stack of confirmed deals, the hijacks, the sackings, and give you the complete picture of the global market.
Because today, we aren't just looking at a club buying a talented player. We are dissecting complex, interconnected ecosystems.
Right.
We're talking about multi-club ownerships manipulating the market, intense financial domino effects driven by accounting rules, and a ruthless strategic hoarding of youth talent. The game off the pitch is now just as tactical as the one on it.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because before any club can even think about spending hundreds of millions on those players, they need their architects in place.
The managers.
Exactly. The men in the dugouts. And the managerial merry-go-round is spinning at warp speed today. The news out of Germany, for instance, is just massive.
Yeah, that broke really fast.
Just hours ago, Julian Nagelsmann officially left his post as the German national team head coach. And waiting in the wings, Jurgen Klopp is highly open to taking the job.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, the German Football Association, the DFB, they were actually meeting with him in the coming days.
It's a seismic shift for international football, but it actually makes perfect logical sense when you look at the psychological toll of management.
Right, because when Klopp left Liverpool, he looked entirely depleted. So if you're listening to this thinking, wait, didn't he just say he needed a break from football? You aren't alone. Taking the Germany job feels a bit like, a retired superhero coming back to save his hometown.
That's a great way to put it.
But is he really rested enough for this?
Well, we have to contrast the environments. National team management is a completely different beast compared to the relentless, exhausting grind of club football.
It's just a different pace, right?
Entirely. Klopp left the club scene because of that weekend-to-weekend churn. The press conferences every 3 days, the constant travel, the daily micromanagement of 50 staff members.
Yeah, never stops.
Exactly. At the DFB, he would have far less day-to-day pressure. He gets to be the overarching visionary for German football, stepping in for intense, focused bursts during international breaks, rather than fighting a grueling 10-month war of attrition.
That makes a lot of sense. But speaking of that grueling club churn, the volatility down in the leagues is insane right now. Massimiliano Allegri has just agreed to join Napoli as their new head coach.
That's a huge move for Serie A.
It is. And over in England, Nottingham Forest has just sacked Vitor Pereira and immediately brought in Oliver Glasner for next season, fresh off him leaving Crystal Palace with numerous trophies.
A ruthless decision by Forest.
Totally ruthless.
Yeah.
Which makes me wonder, does changing a manager mid-transfer window or right before a season completely ruin a club's recruitment blueprint? Forest was building a squad for Pereira, now they have Glasner. Is that a necessary shock to the system, or are they just setting a pile of money on fire?
It's highly disruptive, there's no denying that. But I wouldn't call it setting money on fire. I'd call it an expensive course correction. You have to understand that managers like Glasner and Allegri, they bring hyper-specific tactical demands. They aren't just plug and play.
Wait, for those who aren't tactical nerds, break that down for us. What does a pivot from Pereira to Glasner actually look like for the recruitment team?
Imagine you spent 6 months shopping for parts to build a luxury yacht, and suddenly you are told you need to build a speedboat.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
Yeah, Pereira often favors a more structured, perhaps slower-paced positional game. Glasner's system relies on high-intensity, aggressive pressing. He needs what tacticians call transition monsters.
Transition monsters, I love that.
Right. Players who can sprint relentlessly to win the ball back high up the pitch and immediately attack. Forest's recruitment team has to pivot overnight from scouting players with great static passing range to finding elite athletes with massive stamina.
So all their previous scouting is basically useless.
Pretty much. Every target they had yesterday might be obsolete today. Contrast that with France, where Paris FC just appointed former Chelsea manager Liam Rowe Sr. on a 2-year plus 1-season contract.
That's a much more stable approach.
Exactly. That is the opposite approach. That's a club identifying a young, progressive coach and giving him a long-term runway to build his own blueprint from scratch.
So the architects are in place. But to execute those blueprints, to buy those transition monsters, you need serious cash. And that brings us to the Premier League, where the financial muscle being flexed right now is it's staggering.
The Premier League is operating in an entirely different financial stratosphere compared to the rest of the world. It's an arms race, and the numbers we are seeing dictate that no club can afford to blink.
Here's where it gets really interesting and frankly, a bit mind-boggling.
Yeah.
Tottenham Hotspur is on an absolute tear. Like I said earlier, a £185 million spending spree on just 2 players.
Incredible numbers.
They've signed Sandro Tonali from Newcastle for £100 million on a 6-year contract running to June 2032. And they added Mateus Fernandes from West Ham for £85 million. I have to push back here, though.
Go ahead.
If you're looking at Tonali, is a £100 million price tag genuinely justifiable in terms of on-pitch value? Or has the Premier League market completely detached from reality?
It's tempting to say it's detached from reality, but it's actually just functioning on a new, hyperinflated mathematical reality. You mentioned Tonali's 6-year contract. That is the key to understanding this.
The amortization trick.
Exactly. When Spurs pay £100 million for Tonali on a 6-year deal, they don't record a £100 million loss this year.
Right.
For accounting purposes, specifically the Premier League's profit and sustainability rules, that fee is spread evenly over the life of the contract. So Tonali costs Spurs about £16.6 million a year on the books.
Which is much easier to swallow.
It makes massive fees digestible. But the real story here is the financial domino effect this triggers across the league.
Right, because Newcastle suddenly has a massive influx of cash.
Precisely. Newcastle loses Tonali, but they instantly book a massive chunk of pure profit to reinvest. And they did exactly that, taking that Tonali money and signing 18-year-old Basu Manatur from Hoffenheim for £42 million on a 5-year deal to replace Anthony Gordon.
Wow, just instant reinvestment.
The money flows downstream instantly. You drop a boulder in the water at Tottenham, and the waves wash up in Newcastle, and then over in Germany.
And the waves hit the south coast of England, too. Because Brighton just acquired Luka Vuskovic from Tottenham for £46 million, plus $4 million in add-ons.
Right.
So Spurs spend big, but they are clearly clearing out highly valued assets to fund that massive midfield rebuild.
It's a self-sustaining ecosystem, and look at how Everton is operating within that exact same ecosystem, but playing a much more cautious game.
Yeah, they have to.
They just signed Hayden Hackney from Middlesbrough. The structure of that deal is an absolute masterclass in risk mitigation for a club that can't afford a £100 million mistake.
The details on the Hackney deal are wild. It's £16.5 million up front, plus $3 million in standard add-ons, and then an extra £5 million that Everton only pays if they qualify for the Champions League. Plus, they permanently signed Chelsea youngster Arthur Barrett to bolster the squad.
That Champions League clause for Hackney is brilliant financial structuring.
It really is.
Everton is essentially hedging their bets. They're saying, look, if this player helps us achieve the ultimate financial prize, the Champions League broadcasting revenue, we will happily give you a cut of that windfall.
But if he doesn't?
Exactly. If Hackney struggles and Everton finishes 10th, their financial exposure is strictly limited. It protects the club's long-term balance sheet while still securing top-tier talent.
Meanwhile, Chelsea's transfer strategy continues to be, well, highly chaotic, to put it mildly. They've just identified Rayo Vallecano's Pep Chavarria as the direct replacement for Marc Cucurella.
Another new face at Stamford Bridge.
Yeah, and in a really bizarre twist that I don't think anyone saw coming, Chelsea had an £8 million bid for veteran Granit Xhaka rejected by Sunderland.
That is
Let that sink in. Sunderland rejected Chelsea, but Chelsea reportedly plans to return with a new offer.
That exit situation perfectly highlights the unpredictable desperation of the market. You have an elite, battle-tested veteran somehow ending up at a club like Sunderland, which then forces a massive global brand like Chelsea to negotiate with the championship-level team just to find immediate midfield stability.
It's upside down.
It shows that when a manager demands a very specific tactical profile, say, a veteran leader who can dictate tempo, traditional scouting hierarchies completely fly out the window.
It really does level the playing field in weird ways. And there is still value to be found if you look closely. Bournemouth secured striker Alvaro Rodriguez from Elche for 25 million euros, with potential 5 million euro bonus.
Solid business.
Very. Leeds United smartly scooped up former Liverpool player Harry Wilson on a free transfer after he left Fulham, and Watford grabbed Omar Toure for free from German side Heidenheim.
In a market where £100 million is the new normal for a central midfielder, getting Premier League experience for absolutely zero transfer fee like the Wilson and Toure deals is incredible business.
Yeah, you need those deals to survive.
Those are the unsung structural deals that keep a squad competitive over a 38-game season.
But dropping $100 million on a finished product, or sweeping up veterans, is largely a luxury only the Premier League can afford. So how do clubs without that massive broadcast revenue compete?
They get creative.
Right. They don't buy stars. They stockpile the youth who will become them. Which brings us to Manchester City and the global network model. City is aggressively hijacking Arsenal's target, 16-year-old Jeremy Monga, from Leicester for £10 million.
A huge coup for them.
He is incredibly close to arriving at the Etihad. They also agreed to bring young goalkeeper Pierce Charles back from his loan at Sheffield Wednesday to integrate him further.
This is the strategic youth hoarding we mentioned at the start. City isn't just buying for Pep Guardiola's starting 11 today. They are aggressively cornering the market on the stars of 2030. And just as importantly, they are specifically preventing direct rivals like Arsenal from acquiring those assets.
It's defensive recruitment.
It's defensive recruitment as much as it is offensive.
Okay, but then there's this next deal that I really have to challenge you on.
Let's hear it.
Manchester City is buying Mathis Detourbe from Troy for 25 million euros and immediately loaning him out to AS Monaco for a full season. Here is the catch. Troyes is a sister club within the City Football Group.
Yes, they are.
City buying a player from their own sister club for 25 million euros just to loan him out.
I mean, that feels like moving money from your left pocket to your right pocket while wearing a different jacket. Is this fair play? Or is this just a massive loophole?
It's a highly controversial mechanism, but under current regulations, it is completely legal. If we connect this to the bigger picture, you are looking at the raw, unfiltered power of the multi-club ownership model.
Right.
Is it a loophole? Some would argue yes. But functionally, it provides ultimate corporate flexibility.
How does that actually work for the clubs involved, though?
Think of it as corporate synergy. Troyes gets an immediate, much-needed injection of 25 million euros to balance their local books and comply with French financial regulations.
Oh. Manchester City secures a highly appreciating asset on their global balance sheet. And Monaco, a Champions League-level club, takes on the player's wages and gives him elite development time.
It's a closed-loop economy.
Exactly. It makes traditional scouting and traditional solitary club finances look entirely outdated.
It's an empire. You aren't playing against a football club anymore. You're playing against a multinational conglomerate.
And speaking of big money moving around the globe, Saudi side Al Ahly officially signed Armenian talent Edward Spirtian from Russian club Krasnodar for 25 million euros. The money just keeps flowing out of Europe entirely.
And that relentless outflow of talent and cash puts even more pressure on mainland Europe to get incredibly creative. Because while the Premier League, the City Football Group, and Saudi Arabia have brute cash, leagues like Italy's Serie A have to operate on razor-thin margins. Which brings us perfectly to the Italian shuffles and those incredibly complex, survival-driven European maneuvers. Juventus just signed Genoa striker Jeff Ekator for 16 million euros plus 2 million in add-ons. But, as part of the agreement, David Puska is going the other way to Genoa.
This is exactly the kind of creative accounting I'm talking about. Swap deals, or player plus cash deals, are essential survival tools in a league with significantly less TV revenue.
But how does a swap deal actually help a club's balance sheet? Why not just pay the cash?
Because of a concept called plusvalenza, or capital gains.
Okay, break that down.
When Juventus sends Puska to Genoa, they record the sale value of Puska as immediate 100% profit on this year's books. But the cost of buying Ekator is amortized or spread out over the length of his new contract.
Wow.
So in the short term, Juventus actually improves their financial standing for the current year while getting the striker they need, all while lowering the actual raw cash expenditure.
That is fascinating. It's essentially legal book cooking to survive. And Genoa is busy on other fronts, too. They are in contact for veteran striker Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang. But the sources note that his salary demands are making negotiations really difficult.
And that highlights the other major hurdle in Italy. The transfer fee is only half the battle. The wage structure is incredibly rigid.
Right.
A player like Aubameyang, who is used to Premier League or La Liga wages, simply doesn't fit into a mid-table Serie A wage bill without massive compromises from the player. They can't just absorb a €150,000 a week contract like a mid-table English team could.
Yeah, the math just doesn't work. And we're seeing intense battles for younger players, too, as teams scramble for affordable talent. Inter Milan is closing in on Israeli player Anan Kaleli from Union St. Gilloise, and they are actively fighting off strong interest from Napoli to get it done.
It's highly competitive.
Meanwhile, Bologna and Sassuolo are in a massive tug-of-war for partisan youngster Eugen Ugresic. Torino secured Gaetano Oristania on loan after his stint at Parma ended. And Unai Gomez, the 23-year-old, is heading to Udinese from Athletic Bilbao with a medical already scheduled.
This is the middle-class scramble for marginal gains. Every single euro is stretched and creatively accounted for in these deals.
That's frantic.
It's a high-stakes game of finding undervalued assets and structuring the payments often through loans with obligations to buy so the financial hit lands on next year's budget instead of this year's.
But then there's the Mattia Liberali deal, which really caught my eye. He chooses to join Como from Catanzaro for €6 million, specifically choosing not to return to AC Milan. Yet Milan receives €3 million from this transfer.
It's a very modern transfer story.
So what does this all mean? From the player's side, why would a promising talent reject a historic giant like AC Milan for a club like Como? Is guaranteed playing time now officially more valuable than wearing a prestigious badge?
To the modern player, absolutely. Liberali and his agents know that at Como, he is the main project. The team will be built around his development.
Right, he's the star.
If he goes back to Milan, he might just be a rotational piece, playing in cup games against lower league opposition. Stalling your career at 21 for the sake of a badge is a massive risk. But from a financial perspective, this deal highlights the hidden power of intricate sell-on clauses.
Right, because Milan didn't even own him anymore.
Exactly. Milan didn't buy the player, but because their front office likely inserted a 50% sell-on clause when he originally left their academy for Catanzaro, they just generated a free €3 million.
That is wild.
They monetized a player who isn't even in their squad. It is brilliant passive accounting.
It really is.
Yeah.
And just to round out the European maneuvers, Espanyol is one step away from finalizing a loan for Gabriel Moscardo from PSG. Again, loans being used to bridge the massive financial gaps between the elite and everyone else.
It's a symbiotic relationship. PSG gets high-level development minutes for a player they invested heavily in, and Espanyol gets a Tier 1 talent they could never dream of affording to buy outright.
Finally, as we see youth taking over and being hoarded by these mega clubs, we have to look at the other end of the spectrum. The legendary veterans who are finding fascinating new chapters at the twilight of their careers.
The old guard moving on.
Yeah, and nowhere is this more apparent or more tragic than at Barcelona. Marc-Andre ter Stegen has agreed to leave Barcelona, joining Ajax Amsterdam on loan. And Robert Lewandowski is heading to the Chicago Fire in MLS on a free transfer after leaving Barcelona.
Huge departures.
I have to say, it doesn't just feel like a transition. It feels like Barcelona is hosting a massive garage sale, or rather, they're selling off the load-bearing walls of their house just to pay the mortgage. Isn't a team losing its soul in the process?
It's a fantastic analogy. They are absolutely chipping away at their foundation. But this raises a crucial point about the long-term cost of short-term financial mismanagement. Barcelona isn't doing this because they want a fresh tactical start. They are doing it because they legally have to.
Their wage bill was that bad.
It was utterly unsustainable. Their wage-to-turnover ratio violated every safe financial metric in La Liga. Losing the soul of the team, as you put it, is the agonizing price they are paying for years of reckless overspending on astronomical contracts.
It's hard to watch.
They are heavily relying on La Masia, their academy, to magically produce teenagers to replace that soul. But seeing club icons like ter Stegen and Lewandowski just shipped out to Ajax and Chicago respectively, it's a stark, brutal reminder of financial reality biting back.
It's a harsh lesson for the rest of Europe. Meanwhile, in the exact same league, Atletico Madrid is doing incredible business by capitalizing on the market's deficiencies. Alejandro Grimaldo has officially joined Atletico from Bayer Leverkusen for €20 million, contracted until June 2030.
Now, that is the antithesis of the Barcelona situation. That is phenomenal targeted business.
Or just $20 million.
Getting a player in his prime like Grimaldo, who is coming off an incredible tactical system at Leverkusen, for just 20 million euros is an absolute steal in today's £100 million market. It proves that if your scouting is sharp and your wage bill is controlled, there is still immense value to be found.
Atletico also saw Clem Lenglet join Benfica on a 3-year contract, getting his wages off the books, so they are balancing their incomings and outgoings beautifully.
Masterful squad management.
It really is. Well, it has been an absolute whirlwind of a day. To quickly recap for everyone listening, we've covered the tectonic plates shifting in management with Nagelsmann out and Klopp potentially returning to save Germany.
A massive story.
We've dissected Spurs' staggering £185 million midfield rebuild and the amortization math behind it. We looked at City's aggressive youth hijacks and the controversial multi-club loop.
Left pocket to right pocket?
Exactly. We mapped out the intricate swap deals and sell-on clauses, keeping Syria afloat, and finally, the end of an era for Barcelona's veterans crossing the Atlantic. You are now fully caught up on every single detail of the global football transfer landscape.
It's an immense amount of information to process, but understanding how all these moves connect is the only way to truly understand modern football.
Totally agree.
And it leaves me with one final provocative thought for you to ponder. With the unstoppable rise of massive multi-club empires effectively trading players among their own sister clubs to balance books, will we eventually see a breaking point?
That is the big question.
Will regulatory bodies like UEFA step in with drastic new laws to burst this bubble, or is this corporate synergy just the unavoidable, unstoppable new normal for global football?
That is a huge question to leave hanging in the air and definitely something to keep an eye on as this window progresses. Thank you once again for joining us. See you next time in other latest news. Ciao.